I found divorce papers in my husband's briefcase, but the signature on them wasn't just his. It was my sister, the woman who stood beside me at my wedding. Would you believe me if I told you that the person I trusted most, the one I called sister, had been secretly planning to replace me in my own marriage? What would you do if the two people you trusted most stabbed you in the back? My husband, my sister. One signed my heart away, and the other sealed it with a pen. Stay with me, because what I did next shocked not only them, but the entire city. Before I tell you what happened, don't forget to subscribe and comment where you are watching from, because this story is one you'll never forget. My name is Hilda. I'm 31 years old, and if you had asked me 2 months ago, I would have told you my life was stable, not perfect, but comfortable. I had a husband, Jacob, who I thought loved me, a sister, Deborah, who I thought supported me, and a life I thought was secure. It all started one ordinary Tuesday morning. The coffee machine was buzzing, my phone was vibrating with work emails, and Jacob was rushing out the door like always. He paused at the hallway mirror, tightening his tie, and called out, "Hilda, could you grab the blue file from my briefcase? I need it for work." It was nothing unusual. I had done little favors like that countless times in our marriage. I walked over to his leather briefcase, unzipped it, and pulled out the file. But as I did, something unexpected happened. A neat stack of folded papers slid out onto the floor. At first, I assumed it was just office work. Jacob was an executive, always buried under contracts and proposals. But then my eyes froze on the bold black letters across the top page. Divorce petition. I couldn't breathe. My pulse thundered in my ears as I bent down and picked it up. Divorce? From me? Without even a word? My hands trembled as I flipped the pages, and then I saw something that made my knees weaken. The signature line. Jacob's name was already there, his handwriting steady and clear. But what stopped my heart wasn't his name. It was the second signature beside it. Deborah. My sister. My own blood. The woman who held my hand through childhood. The same sister who had stood beside me in my wedding gown, smiling for pictures as she adjusted my veil. The one who toasted to my forever love with champagne in hand. Her name was carved in that paper in bold ink. I dropped onto the floor without realizing it, the papers shaking violently in my hands. 1,000 questions attacked me at once. How long? Why her? How could he? How could she? I felt like the walls of the house were closing in on me, suffocating me. The air turned heavy, my vision blurred as tears streamed down my face, hot and unrelenting. I don't remember how long I sat there. Minutes, maybe hours. But when Jacob came home that evening, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I wasn't the same Hilda anymore. Because in that moment, sitting on the floor, clutching betrayal written in legal ink, I knew the life I thought I had was already gone. The papers sat on the kitchen counter all day, like a silent bomb waiting to explode. Every time I passed them, my stomach twisted tighter. By the time Jacob's car pulled into the driveway that evening, I felt like my chest was going to burst. I didn't even wait for him to set his briefcase down. He walked in, loosening his tie, humming like a man who didn't have a care in the world. That was what made my blood boil, the ease on his face while mine was still wet with tears. I held the divorce petition in my hand. "What is this, Jacob?" My voice cracked, but it carried enough force to make him stop in his tracks. He turned, eyes narrowing when he saw the papers. For a split second, I thought I saw fear in his eyes. But then, just as quickly, his expression hardened. His jaw clenched, his lips thinned, and suddenly he wasn't the husband I knew. He was someone else. "You weren't supposed to see that yet," he muttered, like I had stumbled on a surprise party gone wrong. "Not supposed to see it?" I laughed bitterly, though tears still streaked my face. "Jacob, this is a divorce petition, signed by you and by Deborah." I thought maybe he'd crumble. Maybe he'd fall to his knees, apologize, tell me it was all a mistake. But instead, his shoulders straightened and he looked me dead in the eye. "It's better this way, Hilda. I love your sister more than I love you." The words sliced through me like glass. I staggered back, clutching the counter to steady myself. My sister?" I whispered, barely able to form the word. "Yes, Deborah." His tone was steady, almost casual. "You've always been successful, always ahead, always the one everyone admired. I married you because of that, because you had connections, stability, a future. But I never loved you the way I love her." My chest heaved, each breath jagged and painful. "So what was I, Jacob? A stepping stone? A placeholder until you got what you really wanted?" He shrugged, like my entire marriage meant nothing. "It's not personal. It's just the truth. And it's better this way. You'll move on, and Deborah and I—" "Don't say it." My voice cracked like thunder. I couldn't bear to hear him finish that sentence. I stared at the man I had shared a bed with, cooked meals for, prayed with, laughed with, the man I thought would grow old with me. And all I saw was a stranger who had been living a lie under my roof. For the first time, I realized something terrifying. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't sorry. He had already made his choice, and it wasn't me. I don't know how I slept that night, or if I slept at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jacob's cold face, his lips forming the words, "I love your sister more." The weight of those papers felt heavier than stone on my chest. By morning, my anger had crystallized into something sharper than grief. If Jacob was the knife, Deborah was the one who twisted it, and I needed answers. I drove to Deborah's house, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight I thought I might snap it. The entire way there, I kept replaying every moment of our childhood. Deborah holding my hand on the first day of school, Deborah sharing her blanket during sleepovers, Deborah clapping louder than anyone when I graduated. Had all of it been a lie? She opened the door wearing a silk robe, her hair pinned up as if she had been expecting me. No shame in her eyes, no guilt, just a sly little smile that made my skin crawl. "Well," she said, leaning against the doorframe, "I guess you found out." "Found out?" My voice shook with fury. "Deborah, how could you? How could you betray me like this? You're my sister." Her smile vanished, replaced by something hard, something venomous. "That's the problem, Hilda. You've always been the perfect one, the successful one, the one everybody looked at and said, 'Why can't you be more like her?'" I stared at her dumbfounded. "You're jealous. That's your excuse for sleeping with my husband, for signing my divorce papers?" She crossed her arms. "Jealousy doesn't even begin to cover it. You've had everything handed to you since we were kids. Everything you touched turned to gold. Men chased you, teachers adored you, and I was always in your shadow." Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I never tried to outshine you, Deborah. I was your sister. I loved you." Her laugh was sharp and cruel. "You loved me? Please, that's rich. You want the truth, Hilda? You're not even my real sister." The words hit me like a blow to the gut. I blinked at her, unable to comprehend what I just heard. What are you talking about?" She leaned in close, her voice low and cutting. "You're adopted. Mom and Dad never told you, but I always knew. And guess what? That means you've been living a lie your entire life. You don't belong to this family. You never did. My knees wobbled. I clutched the door frame to steady myself. You're lying, she said coldly. Call Uncle Robert. He'll confirm it. He was there. The world spun around me. Adopted? Not her sister? I wanted to scream, to deny it, but the fire in Deborah's eyes told me she wasn't bluffing. She didn't just want my husband, she wanted to erase me. And in that moment, I realized Deborah's betrayal wasn't new. It had been growing, festering, waiting to consume me, and now it finally had. I drove home from Deborah's place with tears blurring the road signs, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. Her words kept echoing in my head like a curse. You're not even my real sister. Adopted? Me? I wanted to laugh it off, tell myself it was another one of Deborah's venomous lies, meant to break me. But something in her eyes, that cruel, confident fire, told me she wasn't bluffing. And that terrified me more than anything. By the time I stepped into my apartment, I was shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. I collapsed onto the couch, pulled my knees to my chest, and grabbed my phone with trembling fingers. There was only one person who could give me the truth: Uncle Robert. He had moved to Ghana years ago to start a poultry business, but he always kept in touch during the holidays. He was my father's younger brother, a man I had always trusted. If anyone knew the truth, it was him. My thumb hovered over his name for what felt like forever before I finally pressed call. The line rang once, twice, then clicked. Hilda. His warm, familiar voice filled the silence, and suddenly I couldn't hold back the tears. Uncle Robert, I need to ask you something important. His tone shifted immediately, growing serious. What is it, my child? I swallowed hard. Am I adopted? Silence. A silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. My heart pounded, desperate for him to laugh, to say, "Of course not, Hilda. Deborah is just being cruel." But instead, I heard a deep sigh. Yes, he said softly, it's true. The world tilted beneath me. I clutched the phone tighter, my breath catching. Why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't you tell me? Because it wasn't my secret to tell. Your parents wanted to raise you as their own, and they did. They loved you, Hilda, more than anything. They never wanted you to feel different. My chest heaved as sobs tore through me. So all this time, my whole life, Deborah knew and I didn't? Yes, she overheard a conversation when she was younger. We begged her not to treat you differently, but I fear jealousy grew in her heart instead. I pressed a hand to my forehead, my tears dripping onto my lap. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, my identity, shattered in an instant. Uncle Robert's voice was firm, though. Listen to me, Hilda. Being adopted does not make you any less their daughter. You are family. Don't let Deborah use this truth to destroy you. But as I hung up the call, I couldn't silence the thought twisting in my chest. If I wasn't Deborah's sister, then what was I to her? And why did she seem determined to strip away everything I had left? I thought the worst was behind me after Uncle Robert confirmed the truth. But no, the real storm was just beginning. It was 3 days later when I heard a knock on my door. I opened it, and there they were, together, Jacob and Deborah, standing side by side like some twisted couple straight out of a nightmare. Deborah wore a smug little smile, her arms crossed like she owned the world. Jacob stood tall, his arm brushing hers as if to prove to me where his loyalty now rested. I wanted to slam the door in their faces, but Deborah pushed past me before I could even react. Jacob followed, carrying himself with the arrogance of a man who thought he'd already won. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger. Deborah's eyes swept over my living room the same way a realtor would inspect a property. Finally, she turned to me and said the words that made my knees nearly buckle. "We're getting married, and we'll be moving into the house, so you need to pack your things and leave." I stared at her, unable to process the cruelty in her voice. "You can't be serious." Jacob spoke up then, his voice cold, businesslike. "Hilda, it's pointless to drag this out. Deborah and I are building a future together. That house isn't yours anymore. It's ours." My blood boiled. That house was Mom and Dad's, our parents' legacy. Deborah's smirk widened. "Correction, my parents' legacy, not yours. You're not even their daughter, remember? You don't belong in that house, Hilda. You never did." Her words sliced through me. I could feel my chest tighten, my breath growing shallow. I wanted to scream, to throw them both out, but my body betrayed me. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the two people I had once loved most in the world. I finally found my voice, trembling but firm. "You don't get to decide that. Uncle Robert said." Deborah cut me off with a sharp laugh. "Uncle Robert? The man who abandoned everything and ran off to Ghana with his chickens? Please, he doesn't matter here. What matters is that Jacob and I are together now. And you, Hilda, you're in the way." Jacob stepped closer, his eyes as cold as marble. "It's better if you just leave quietly. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. Part of me wanted to fight, to throw them both out and scream until my lungs gave out. But another part of me, the part still raw from the truth of my adoption, whispered, "Maybe they're right. Maybe you don't belong." Tears stung my eyes as I whispered, "You'll regret this." Deborah tilted her head, smiling like a viper. "No, Hilda, the only one who regret anything is you." And with that, they left, leaving me standing in my own living room, a stranger in the ruins of what used to be my life. The walls of my apartment felt like they were closing in on me after Deborah and Jacob left. Their voices still echoed in my head. "We'll be moving into the house. You need to leave." I sat on the couch for hours, staring at nothing, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was standing on quicksand. Everything solid beneath me was gone. My husband, my sister, my identity, even my home was being ripped away from me. When the tears finally slowed, I reached for my phone. There was only one person I could think to call, Uncle Robert. The moment he answered, his calm, steady voice wrapped around me like a lifeline. "Hilda, what's wrong, child?" I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "They came here, Deborah and Jacob. They told me they're getting married, and they want me out of the house." For a moment, there was only silence. Then I heard the sharp intake of breath on the other end. "That house is not theirs to claim," he said firmly. "Listen to me, Hilda. Do not leave that house." I let out a bitter laugh. "Uncle, how can I stay? Deborah made it clear I don't belong. She reminded me I'm not even blood. She looked me right in the eye and told me the house is hers, and Jacob stood there backing her up." His voice grew stern. "That house was part of your parents' estate, and the estate is bound by their will. Until the will is officially read, nobody has the right to claim what belongs to you, not Jacob, not Deborah, not anyone." I pressed my hand against my chest, my breathing shallow. But Uncle, I feel so weak. I don't know how much more I can take. Every time I see them, every word they say, it's like another knife in my back. Uncle Robert's tone softened. Hilda, listen to me. I know you are hurting. I know the weight feels unbearable, but this is not the time to let them see you crumble. You are stronger than you realize. Your parents loved you deeply, adopted or not, and they made provisions for you, I am certain. That is why the will matters. It holds the truth. His words settled into my heart warm and steady. For a moment, I could almost believe him. Almost. But the reality of Deborah's cruelty still clung to me like poison. I whispered, "What if I can't do it, Uncle? What if they win?" He paused, then spoke with conviction that sent chills down my spine. Then they will regret it, because lies and betrayal cannot outlast truth. Hold your ground, Hilda. I am coming, and when I arrive, everything will change. As I ended the call, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. But still, in the quiet of the night, doubt gnawed at me. I wasn't sure how much longer I could hold out, and that weakness would soon drive me to a decision that changed everything. Nights became my enemy. It was easier to pretend I was fine when the sun was up, when the city outside my window hummed with life, when work emails and phone calls gave me something to distract myself with. But when night came, silence crept in. Silence and memories. I had rented a small apartment after Deborah and Jacob cornered me. Even though Uncle Robert had warned me not to leave the house, I couldn't take it anymore. Every room in that home felt haunted. Our parents' laughter, Jacob's smile, Deborah's fake warmth. The walls felt like they were whispering their betrayal. So I packed a single suitcase and left. Now I lay on a thin mattress in a dimly lit room that didn't feel like mine, staring at the ceiling until my eyes ached. Sleep never came. Instead, the same questions spun in my head like a cruel carousel. How long had Jacob been lying to me? How long had Deborah hated me? How could I have been so blind? Sometimes I pressed a pillow to my chest and sobbed until my throat was raw. Other times, I just lay there, numb. My heart so heavy it felt like it might stop beating altogether. One night, I scrolled through old wedding photos on my phone. There was Deborah, smiling as she adjusted my veil, her hands on my shoulder like a sister's blessing. And there was Jacob, eyes locked on me, his smile so wide it had fooled me into believing I was his forever. I threw the phone across the room, watching it clatter to the floor. The pictures didn't feel like memories anymore. They felt like lies carved into pixels. I stopped eating properly. Coffee and crackers became my diet. My reflection in the mirror looked hollow, like the ghost of the woman I used to be. My friends called, but I ignored them. How could I explain the kind of betrayal that cuts you open from the inside? One evening, as the clock ticked past midnight, I found myself whispering into the empty room. Why me? What did I do to deserve this? The walls had no answer. But then, in the stillness, another voice, my own, whispered back, "Because you trusted the wrong people." That thought sat heavy in my chest. Maybe it was true. Maybe I had been blind because I wanted to believe in love, because I wanted to believe family could never betray me. And as I curled under the blanket, clutching myself tightly, another thought broke through the tears. If they could do this to me without shame, then maybe it's time I stop playing the victim. The words scared me, but they also gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks, a spark. It wasn't strength, not yet, but it was the beginning of it. It was a Saturday morning when my phone buzzed with a notification that changed everything. I hadn't been checking social media much. Scrolling through happy couples and perfect families was like pouring salt on an open wound. But that morning, against my better judgment, I opened Instagram. And there it was. A photo of Deborah in a glittering gold dress standing beside Jacob in a sleek black suit. Their hands entwined, smiles wide, as if they had no shame in the world. The caption beneath the photo stopped my breath. Counting down to the big night. Can't wait to celebrate love at the anniversary gala. Hashtag new beginnings. Hashtag forever us. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. The anniversary gala wasn't just any party. It was the event of the year, filled with politicians, CEOs, celebrities, the kind of people who could make or break reputations overnight. And Jacob and Deborah were planning to use it as their stage, their moment to publicly announce what they had stolen from me. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. Rage burned through my chest, hot and blinding. It wasn't enough for them to betray me in secret. They wanted to humiliate me in public. They wanted the whole city to raise a glass to their lies. As I scrolled, the whispers became clearer. People were already speculating in the comments. Wait, isn't that Hilda's husband? Deborah looks amazing. Finally, she's stepping out of her sister's shadow. Jacob upgraded. Sorry, not sorry. I threw the phone onto the couch, my chest heaving. Tears blurred my vision, but this time they weren't just tears of sorrow. They were tears of fury. I couldn't believe how quickly the world turned its back on me. Friends I had invited into my home were already liking Deborah's photos, leaving comments with heart emojis as if she hadn't destroyed me, as if betrayal was something to applaud. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned, their faces flashing in my mind. Deborah, smug and glittering in gold. Jacob with his fake charm. I kept hearing his voice, calm and cold. I love your sister more. By dawn, something inside me had shifted. The sadness that had weighed me down for weeks hardened into something sharper. I looked in the mirror at my tired face, the dark circles under my eyes, and whispered to my reflection, no more tears. They wanted a stage? Fine. They wanted the cameras, the spotlight, the applause? Fine. But I wasn't going to sit in the shadows and watch them rewrite my story. If they were planning to unveil their new love at the gala, then I would be there too. Not to clap, not to cry, but to end the show before it even began. Once the idea took root in my mind, I couldn't let it go. I lay awake night after night, staring at the ceiling, whispering the same words over and over. They won't win. Not this time. If Jacob and Deborah wanted to humiliate me in public, then I would use that very stage to destroy them. But I couldn't just show up empty-handed. No, if I was going to fight, I needed proof. Hard evidence that would leave them no room to twist the story. So, I began to dig. First, I went through my old laptop. Jacob was careless, always saving copies of things in his email drafts. Sure enough, I found messages, not just to Deborah, but about me. One in particular made my stomach turn. She has the stability we need. Once we secure the business connections, I'll find a way out. Don't worry, Deborah. It's always been you. I stared at those words, bile rising in my throat. I copied every email I could find, creating a folder titled Truth. Next came the photos. Late at night, when I could barely keep my eyes open, I scrolled through Deborah's tagged pictures. Buried between smiling brunch selfies and gym shots, there were glimpses. Jacob's hand on her back at a restaurant, their reflections caught together in a store window. Clues they thought were subtle, invisible to most. But I saw them, and I screenshotted every single one. Then there was the financial trail. Jacob had always been secretive with money, brushing me off whenever I asked about certain accounts. But with patience and a few late-night calls to our shared bank, I discovered what he had been hiding. Transfers to a private account in Deborah's name. Thousands of dollars quietly funneled away while I sat at home wondering why we couldn't afford that vacation he always promised me. Piece by piece, I built my case. The folder grew heavier with each file, each screenshot, each damning proof of betrayal. And with each addition, I felt a flicker of strength return to me. Still, doubt gnawed at the edges of my determination. What if no one cared? What if people believed them over me? After all, Jacob was charming, Deborah was charismatic, and I was just the abandoned wife. But every time that fear rose, I pictured Deborah in her gold dress, Jacob with his smug smile, and the comments online mocking me. And I knew I couldn't stay silent. This wasn't just about my marriage. It was about my dignity, about showing them and the world that I was not weak. The night before the gala, I zipped up a sleek black dress I had kept tucked in the back of my closet. My hands were steady as I looked at myself in the mirror. For weeks, I had been broken, crying into pillows, shrinking into shadows. But tomorrow, I would walk into that ballroom carrying the one thing they didn't expect from me: the truth. The night of the gala arrived like a storm. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, golden lights spilling across marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Women in gowns and men in tuxedos floated between tables draped in white, laughter and champagne bubbling through the air. Cameras flashed as journalists snapped pictures of the city's elite. And in the middle of it all, Jacob and Deborah. I spotted them the moment I walked in. Jacob, looking smug in a tailored black suit, his hand resting proudly on Deborah's waist. She sparkled in a shimmering gold gown, her hair swept into an elegant updo. They looked every bit the glamorous couple they wanted the world to see. For a moment, my breath caught. They seemed untouchable, perfect. And I almost turned around and left. Almost. But then I remembered the tears I cried on that cold mattress, the adoption secret she had hurled at me like a weapon, the cold shrug in Jacob's eyes when he said he loved her more than me. No, I wasn't walking away. Not tonight. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and walked straight into the lion's den. The program of the evening went on: speeches, applause, music. I waited, biding my time, my phone in my clutch, my folder of evidence ready. And then it came. The moment Jacob and Deborah stepped up to the stage, hand in hand, ready to announce their new beginning. The crowd leaned forward, glasses raised, eager for the show. But before Jacob could open his mouth, I rose from my chair and strode to the stage. Gasps rippled through the room as people recognized me. My heels clicked sharply against the floor, echoing like a drumbeat of defiance. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "If you'll all allow me, I think there's something the city should know before these two darlings make their big announcement." Deborah's smile froze. Jacob's jaw tightened, but I didn't stop. I pulled my phone from my clutch and tapped the microphone, the sound vibrating through the hall. Then, one by one, I began to read. Emails, screenshots, bank transfers, pictures. Jacob's words admitting he only married me for my success. Deborah's sneaky rendezvous captured in photographs. The hidden money trail. Every secret they thought they buried, I laid bare under the dazzling ballroom lights. The crowd gasped. Whispers spread like wildfire. Faces turned pale. Champagne glasses slipped from trembling hands. My best friend at the table covered her mouth in shock, eyes wide. I looked directly at Jacob. This man stood beside me as my husband while plotting his escape with my own sister, and this woman, my blood, smiled at my wedding while planning to steal everything from me. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then a single voice in the crowd broke it. "Shame!" And just like that, the room erupted. Cameras flashed, people shouted, chairs scraped as people whispered furiously. Jacob's face went red with rage. Deborah's eyes darted like a cornered animal. But I stood tall, my chest rising, my voice clear. Tonight, I didn't lose a husband or a sister. Tonight, they lost their masks. And in that moment, for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally breathing again. The ballroom exploded into chaos the moment I finished speaking. Voices overlapped, sharp whispers slicing through the air. Some guests stared at Jacob and Deborah in open disgust, while others fumbled for their phones, already recording every second. The sound of cameras snapping was relentless. Betrayal caught in flashes of light. Deborah clutched Jacob's arm, her gold dress glittering under the chandeliers. But her face told a different story. Her perfect smile was gone, replaced with a mask of panic. Jacob, however, was different. His shock lasted only a second before his eyes hardened. He grabbed the microphone from the stand, his voice booming over the crowd. "Don't listen to her lies," he barked, pointing at me like I was some intruder. "She's bitter, jealous, desperate. This is the ranting of a woman who can't accept that her marriage is over." Gasps rippled through the crowd again, but this time mixed with skeptical frowns. A man near the front muttered, "But those emails, the photos." Jacob pressed on, his voice steady and commanding, the same tone he used in boardrooms when he wanted to win. "Yes, we exchanged messages. Yes, I confided in Deborah. But this is twisted. Hilda's making it look like more than it is. She's trying to destroy me because she can't handle rejection." My stomach churned as I watched him. Even caught red-handed, Jacob had the audacity to spin the story to paint me as the villain. Deborah leaned into the mic, her voice trembling but rehearsed. "Hilda has always been unstable. She's struggled with envy her whole life. Tonight is just another example of her trying to ruin the happiness of others." A wave of fury surged through me. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. They weren't just liars. They were shameless liars. But the crowd wasn't fully buying it. I could see the doubt spreading like cracks in glass. People whispered to one another, pulling up their phones, scrolling through social media where my evidence was already going viral. The screenshots, the transfers, they were out there now, beyond Jacob's control. One woman shouted from the back, "Then explain the bank transfers, Jacob. Was that her imagination too?" Laughter erupted at his expense. Deborah's face went pale. Jacob's jaw tightened, but I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. The walls were closing in. Still, he doubled down. "This is nothing but a smear campaign. Hilda is trying to destroy my reputation, and she'll stop at nothing." I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Destroy you? No, Jacob. I didn't destroy you. You did that yourself the moment you betrayed me with my sister." The crowd roared, some clapping, others jeering. Phones pointed at us like weapons, capturing every second. And in that glittering ballroom filled with power and wealth, I realized something. Jacob wasn't untouchable anymore.
His perfect mask had cracked. But I also realized something else, something far more dangerous. The war between us was only just beginning.
The morning after the gala, I woke up to a storm. Not thunder, not rain, but headlines. Hilda crashes gala in jealous rage. Estranged wife causes scene at society event. Jacob and Deborah remain unshaken after public humiliation attempt. My phone buzzed nonstop with calls and texts. Some friends wanted to know if it was true. Others didn't even bother asking. They just believed what the headlines told them. The truth I had exposed was already being buried under their carefully crafted lies. I should have expected it. Jacob was a man who knew how to control a room, and Deborah knew how to play the victim. Together, they spun the story like expert puppeteers, painting me as the unstable, jealous ex-wife who couldn't let go. But what I didn't expect came 2 nights later. A loud knock rattled my apartment door. When I opened it, 2 police officers stood in the hallway. "Hilda Evans?" one asked, his tone clipped. "Yes." My stomach dropped. "You're under arrest for harassment and defamation. You'll need to come with us." I froze, the blood draining from my face. "What? Harassment? Defamation? I didn't." "Ma'am, please step aside," the other officer said firmly. My neighbors peeked from their doors, whispering as I was led away in handcuffs. Shame burned hotter than fire on my skin. Deborah and Jacob hadn't just betrayed me. Now they were determined to erase me completely. At the station, the charges were read out. They had filed complaints that I had been stalking them, sending threats, spreading lies to ruin their reputations. Lies stacked on lies, and suddenly I was the criminal. Sitting in that cold cell, the concrete floor beneath me, I felt the last of my strength drain away. Tears rolled silently down my cheeks. I whispered to myself, how did it come to this? How did I become the villain in my own story? But even in that darkness, a voice echoed in my memory. Uncle Robert's. Don't let them see you crumble. Truth outlasts lies. I clung to those words like a lifeline, rocking back and forth on the hard bench. The days blurred together in that cell. The smell of metal and disinfectant clung to my clothes. The whispers of other inmates haunted me. I wondered if this was how my story ended. Abandoned, framed, and forgotten. But then, just when despair had almost swallowed me whole, I heard the sound of footsteps approaching. The cell door creaked open, and a familiar voice called out my name. Hilda. I looked up through swollen eyes, and there he was. Uncle Robert, standing tall, his presence filling the room like a shield. He said firmly, signing the bail papers, I'm here. You're coming with me, and together, we're going to finish this. For the first time in weeks, I felt the faintest spark of hope. The war wasn't over yet. The air outside the police station felt different, sharp, cold, but freeing. After days in that suffocating cell, just breathing fresh air again made my chest ache with gratitude. And there was Uncle Robert standing beside me, his hand on my shoulder, steady and reassuring. He looked older than the last time I had seen him, gray streaking his beard, the sun of Ghana darkening his skin. But his eyes were the same, strong, calm, unshakable. Come, he said, guiding me to his car. We have work to do. As we drove, silence filled the space between us, heavy but safe. I stared out the window, my thoughts a storm. Finally, I whispered, Uncle, what if they've already won? The city believes them. The media calls me jealous. I've lost everything. His voice was low but firm. No, Hilda. They've only won the battle, not the war.
I turned to him, my hands clenched in my lap. But I left the house. I broke your advice. Deborah said I don't belong there. And she's right, isn't she? I'm not even their real daughter. Uncle Robert's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His jaw flexed before he spoke. Blood doesn't define love, child. Your parents chose you. They raised you. They built their world around you. That house, that legacy, it's as much yours as if you were born into it. Tears stung my eyes. For weeks, I had felt hollow, like I was an outsider in my own life. But hearing him say that with such certainty filled me with a strength I didn't know I still had. When we reached his hotel, he sat me down at the small table by the window. He placed a worn leather folder on the table and slid it toward me. The will is being read in 2 days, he said, and I need you to be ready. Deborah and Jacob will come in confident, smug, certain the world belongs to them. Let them. Don't shout. Don't cry. Just sit tall and listen. I frowned. But what if it doesn't go my way? What if Deborah gets everything? A faint smile tugged at the corners of his lips. Then you'll know for sure. But Hilda, his eyes softened, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw hope in them. I think you'll be surprised. We stayed up late that night, going over every detail, every memory of my parents, every piece of advice they had left behind. Uncle Robert reminded me who I was, not the abandoned wife, not the jealous sister, not the broken woman they tried to paint me as. I was Hilda, the daughter my parents had chosen, the woman who had survived betrayal and disgrace. And when the will was read, I would stand, not as a victim, but as the rightful heir to the truth.
The law office smelled faintly of polished wood and ink, the kind of place where legacies are sealed and lives are reshaped. I sat at the long mahogany table with Uncle Robert by my side, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure the others could hear it. Across from me sat Jacob and Deborah. Deborah wore a cream blazer and pearls, her hair styled perfectly, her lips curved in a smug little smile. She looked like a queen arriving to claim her throne. Jacob, in his navy suit, leaned back with confidence, his hand resting on hers like they were already husband and wife. When the attorney entered with the folder of documents, Deborah's smile widened. She didn't even look at me. Why would she? In her mind, I was already erased. The lawyer cleared his throat. We are here to read the last will and testament of Mr. and Mrs. Evans. His voice was formal, steady, but each word felt like a drumbeat against my chest. As he began, my palms grew sweaty. My mind screamed with doubt. What if Deborah was right? What if my parents had left me nothing, knowing I wasn't their blood? What if this moment shattered me all over again? I bit the inside of my cheek and forced myself to breathe. The lawyer continued. To our beloved daughters, Deborah and Hilda. Deborah straightened proudly, flashing a quick glance at Jacob. We leave the entirety of our estate to be shared as outlined in the following clauses. My heart nearly stopped. They said daughters, both of us. Adopted or not, I was included. The lawyer flipped a page and read on. To Deborah, we leave the small vineyard in Napa, along with the art collection housed within it. To Hilda, we leave the family home,
the residence located at Briarwood Avenue, as well as its adjoining land. The room went silent. Deborah's smile faltered. Jacob leaned forward, frowning, as if he had misheard. The lawyer continued, unshaken. Furthermore, we entrust Hilda with the role of executor of the estate, responsible for overseeing all remaining assets and ensuring our wishes are honored. I heard Deborah suck in a sharp breath. Her knuckles whitened around Jacob's hand. "What?" she hissed. The lawyer looked up calmly. "That is the will of your parents, Mrs. Evans, signed and notarized." I felt Uncle Robert's hand squeeze mine under the table. My throat tightened, tears pricking my eyes, not from sadness this time, but from a surge of vindication. Deborah turned on me, her face twisted with rage. "This isn't right. She's not even their real daughter." The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "According to this will, Hilda is their legal heir, regardless of biology. This document is binding." Jacob muttered a curse under his breath, his smugness gone, his face pale. Deborah looked like her entire world had been ripped from under her. For the first time in weeks, I sat taller, my voice steady. I said, "You tried to take everything from me, but it was never yours to take." The silence that followed was sweeter than any victory I had ever known.
When the will reading ended, silence hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Deborah sat frozen, her lips parted, her face drained of its smug glow. Jacob's jaw was clenched so tightly, I thought his teeth might crack. Meanwhile, I felt something I hadn't in weeks: strength. Not the shaky kind that comes and goes with tears, but a steady flame burning in my chest. Uncle Robert stood, offering me his hand. "Come on, child," he said softly. "You don't need to sit here any longer." I rose slowly, deliberately, and smoothed the folds of my dress. For once, I wasn't the woman shrinking in the shadows while they dictated my life. I was the woman they couldn't break. As I turned to leave, Deborah's voice cracked like shattered glass. "This isn't over, Hilda. You don't deserve that house. You don't deserve any of it." I paused at the door, my hand on the frame, and looked back at her. Maybe not in your eyes, Deborah, but in theirs, in Mom and Dad's. My voice steadied, clear and sharp. I was always their daughter, chosen, loved, and now trusted. And no amount of your hate will ever change that. Her face twisted with fury, tears streaking her perfect makeup. Jacob grabbed her arm, whispering something, but I didn't care anymore. Their words no longer had the power to wound me. When I stepped outside into the daylight, I drew in the freshest breath I'd taken in months. It was like the city itself welcomed me back, the sun breaking through the clouds to remind me that storms don't last forever. In the days that followed, the scandal only grew. People who had once whispered about me as the bitter ex-wife now whispered about Jacob and Deborah, the greedy lovers who tried to steal everything and lost. The photos, the bank transfers, the lies, they were still out there, spreading like wildfire. Their reputations crumbled under the weight of their own actions. Deborah stopped posting on social media. Jacob was forced to take a leave of absence from his firm. Their golden glow was gone. And me? I returned to the house, the home my parents had entrusted to me. Walking through those familiar rooms was painful at first. The memories, the laughter, even the betrayals whispered from the walls. But I realized something powerful. The house wasn't haunted by their lies. It was filled with my parents' love. I spent that first night sitting on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, feeling something I hadn't felt in so long. Peace. I hadn't just survived betrayal. I had turned it into my strength. I didn't lose a husband. I didn't lose a sister. I lost 2 liars. And in exchange, I gained something far greater: freedom, dignity, and the truth. Their shame would follow them everywhere. But me? I was finally free to start over.